Ask the Podcast Coach for August 15th, 2020.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means, hey, it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only. Oh, you know what? I don't have your banner because you changed
it, didn't you?
Yeah,
you changed it for the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy, and I never.
I've gone 1 week. 1 week.
Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Good to be back from beautiful Colorado. It was super hot, and but you know, even in the mountains, it cools down in the evening. It was beautiful. Last Saturday, I had all set to listen. I didn't have time to listen to the whole thing, but I was going to chime in. So I jump in and I realized I was in Mountain Time and not Central. And so I came at the end of the show. You guys had gone into the post show, but you know what I missed while I was gone? The coffee pour.
The coffee pour?
Yeah. Is somebody still sponsoring this?
He's still sponsoring this. We're talking about podcast branding. I'm actually trying to make something here just so I could do this. Brought to you by podcastbranding.co. And Jim, if you missed it, I was making a mistake and saying that Mark was a graphic artist for 13 years.
Yeah.
That is wrong. He's been an award-winning graphic artist for 30 years.
Wow.
He started podcasting in 2013. So
okay.
If you need a website, if you need a logo, if you need artwork, well, I'm going to give you the pop quiz. I gave this to Craig. We'll see. What is the difference between a logo and artwork?
So
it's a tough one.
I might say a logo is one of those consistent branding items that that represents who you are from a brand, right? Artwork would be something you'd use maybe like this individual show cover art, something like that. Where
there you go. You got it. I used the examples last week and I dated myself in all of these. Do you remember? Were you around for Kiss Destroyer, the album cover?
Well, I was around. I don't remember it.
Yeah. That's a great album, by the way. Detroit Rock City, tons of great hits on that. God of Thunder. Anyway, the album is this really cool, elaborate painting of the Kiss dude standing on a mountain looking all rock. Yeah. And so that's the artwork, but the logo, that KISS thing they have on everything, is their logo.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So, but so if you need a website, if you need a logo, if you need artwork, it's all there. Podcastbranding.co. And thanks for sponsoring the morning pour. Yeah, there you go.
Logo, right? This is logo.
Yeah.
Logo.
The big
G. I don't wear this much, but I should maybe wear it more often. As far as I was down to like the last shirt in my drawer. We haven't done laundry since we came back. But, hey, I got some logo. I have some gear I could wear, so I pulled that out.
I think we all have that. You know, that one pair of underwear that just screams, it's time to do laundry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mark mine. So as it's getting down, and so I know I've got 4 pairs. I better get some laundry going to get this thing done. So
yeah. Now I got a question this week, and it's funny because we're both doing this. And I when you think of YouTubers, do you think it's distracting if we have microphones in the picture?
Well, most of the YouTubers that I watch are DIY YouTubers, so they're doing something. That's kind of the genre. If it's going to be like, it's going to be something like this show, like a Podcasters Roundtable or, something like that. Even Twit or some of the shows, I'm going to listen to those as a podcast. I'm going to listen to those in the car. For me, YouTube is more of I want to see what somebody is doing. Those don't translate well. I don't think, I'm watching 2 YouTubers build a ship. That doesn't translate well to a podcast, right? Because the stuff they're doing is beautiful. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, because I had just said somebody like, well, I said, if you wanted to, like, I could take my microphone and move it down here and kind of point it up and it would be less in the picture. I said, I wouldn't stop watching a YouTube video because somebody had a microphone. Now, if it was smack dab in my face and I couldn't see me, that would be a little distracting. But, if it was out of the way and I could see the person, I don't really mind. But they were really like, I need a lavalier. I can't do.
But there are a lot of good ones now. Like this current YouTube generation of content makers they're all using lavs, though, at least the ones I'm using, or some of them have a directional mic on top of their camera, and you can kind of tell, right? But I watch a guy who's building this house, and he's got a nice lav, and he is crystal clear all the time. So I do think if you're getting into if you're going to be a YouTuber, now for this, we're podcasting first and then YouTube. So right. I don't know. Could we benefit from a lav right now? Totally. And are there good enough ones out there right now to do it? Absolutely. I think there's some good ones out there. So it just depends what you want. I'm more comfortable this way. I just did an interview at work. They wanted to interview me for some material, some content stuff we're making. And I had to sit in a chair with lights they were using what do you call what do you call that mic that sits
shotgun.
Shotgun mic. Thank you. And it's still a little early. And I was not comfortable sitting there. I was like, can I have a desk and a microphone? And can you bring the webcam a little closer? It's just what I'm used to, right? I kind of told him this isn't my best way of doing things. But I wouldn't make such a big deal about it. If they want it, do it. If they don't, like, I'm still going to watch them. If it's great content, I don't care if they got a mic. I don't care if they're holding it like this. Ross Brand did this for a while, right? He was, when he was live, he had a microphone, the old Bob Barker or the Man on the Street kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it good content?
That's it. I told him, I said, I wouldn't, because this was like stopping the person from starting. He's like, well, I can't like get going until, and I'm like, wait, if I remember right, you have, and he's got like all the typical podcast mics that we hear. He's got them all. And I'm like, why? He's like, oh, I need a lav. And I'm like, no, not really. So, and Bangs is saying that, Rode has some really cool wireless systems now, Kanika, things like that. So, but I will say this, there's a show I listen to called Marketing School. It's Neil Patel and Eric Sue. And it's interesting because in the early days, Eric had horrendous, like in a bathroom, in a tunnel, underwater audio. And I actually tried to send him a 2100 because I liked the show. I just couldn't take his audio. And he gave me a PO box, and apparently UPS will not ship to a PO box. So it came back to me. But it's interesting because today I actually have this little speaker. It hangs in the shower so I can listen to podcasts in the shower. And it was interesting because they just switched. They now they're trying to do the whole multi-purpose. So they record the show on YouTube and then put it out as a podcast. And I don't know if Neil is worried about having a microphone in the screen or not, but he went from being right up on the microphone. Everything sounded great. And Eric got his own microphone. Now Eric sounds great. And Neil sounds like he's about 2 feet away from the microphone. And my guess is he's got a shotgun mic. Well, the difference was this actually hangs outside the curtain. I do that so it doesn't get wet, even though it's waterproof. And I could hear Eric because he sounded right there. But because there was this little bit of reverb on Neil's voice, I really had to strain to hear what he was saying. It's like he wasn't loud enough. It's one of those things, if you have somebody that doesn't have any reverb and somebody that does, and they're the exact same volume level, the person with reverb is actually going to sound like they're not as loud. So that was one of the reasons why I asked. And then just the fact that I had a member of the School of Podcasting was like, oh, I can't do video until I get a lav. And I'm like, not quite so sure about that. But that's the opinion thing. And that's where, that's why people switch microphones all the time until they find one that they feel comfortable with and things like that. So,
I made the switch over to the Q2U. There we go. I don't know, 2 months ago. Month and a half, 2 months ago, and have been listening back to it on various for the whole month. I've been home podcasting for Gallup and this show and Home Gadget Geeks, and so I've been listening to all those recordings. And I've given it 5 or 6 weeks. I actually don't like it. So it's got too much back end, too much bass for me now. I could probably adjust that. Maybe I need to mess with that a little bit, adjust that on my mixer and see what I can do with that. So maybe before I make that determination, but I kind of mess with the mix a little bit to see if I can get that better. But the 2100 has kind of been my mainstay for the last 6 years. And I will probably, I think I have it. I'm trying to remember where I put it.
Well, I was surprised. I had a coffee cup full of microphones, and it was like a 58, the AT 2005, and I think the the Vox, or that one microphone that was like $40 that showed up, and everyone, wow, that's a ripoff of the 2100. And then the company either went away or they quit making it or whatever. Jason is talking about boom arms. He says, I got a generic OC White style Vivo low profile. I'm actually thinking about getting that. Keeps the mic out of my face and is close enough not to interfere with videos. Because I was doing this thing for Podfest today, and it dawns on me that my arm, not that it really matters, is blocking the ting in School of Podcasting. And I thought, well, I could move it down here and then point the mic up. And that's kind of what Jason's talking about. It's this Vivo, because the OC White is ridiculous. It's like your left arm and your right leg too. It's, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not close to $1,000. But it's cool. It kind of comes down. It hovers right above your desk, and then you point the mic up. So Joe Rogan, I think, uses these now. I'd have to go and look and see. But that way, instead of the mic coming down to your face, it's going up to your face. So you don't have this thing here, because it would be my hand is where the mic stand would be. Hence, it's not in the picture.
Yeah.
And so,
well, in your case, you might want to move it down, so move your microphone up like this and have it coming up, have it straight. That didn't change my sound very much. Now it looks kind of weird for me to do it this way. Actually, that sounds a little bit better that way. So, that's kind of weird. I just like, you can hear the difference in ears, but that feels weird to me, right? To have it that way, but you could probably get away with it.
My problem now, not that I do a lot of fiddling with it, but now it's blocking my view of the Rodecaster.
Right.
I just went to grab a knob and hit the cable that's in the back. So
it takes a different, like when you get used to this kind of stuff of where stuff is, and then you move it and you're smacking it and you can't find it, and you realize it's now blocking your view to something you were looking at before or whatever. As you've been doing this for a while, there are some things you get used to that if you just make sudden changes. This is one of those things where you should probably, if you're going to make a big change like that, make a change and practice it some. Do it where it doesn't matter. Don't just change a bunch of things and go to a recording, because you never get that time back. And so you want to make sure you like it before you change to it.
Jim Harold, the man behind everything spooky,
dude's on fire right now too.
And of course, Podlords says, I end up using that for video. Same idea to minimize mic in the face. Jim did something. I didn't get a chance to turn on the audio, but he was live on Facebook, and I'm scrolling by, and Jim is doing Jeopardy, like straight up Jeopardy. I'll take, Bigfoot for 300, Alex, whatever. I don't know. What was that technology? Because it looked, and he's up in the corner. He's Alex Trebek, and had a whole bunch of people, and I was like, that was really cool. And obviously, when you do that, you're getting your audience involved, and you're making great content. And I was like, if you had the right tool, that could be fun. I did that many moons ago when I was teaching classes. I would do a thing at the end where we would play, and I had some sort of Jeopardy game, and I could put in the questions and answers and things like that. The paranormal quiz is
you would not want to call it Jeopardy online. No, you would not want to use that.
Yeah, that would be bad. But what's the technology behind that? Because that was really, really cool. I was like, it was one of those like, oh, I need to watch this, and I'm like, I got to go pack boxes or whatever. But
Jim, if you got a second, jump in. I got some questions about that as well.
Yeah, if you got a second, jump in. askthepodcastcoach.com/join will get you right in. But here's a great question: does size matter? Oh, no, not size. Does it really matter where the mic is if it's a talking head? I guess as long as it's not in your face. Yeah. And that's where I know there's an Audio Technica. It's a little lav mic, and it comes with, you have to use a watch battery for it to be powered. And I remember using it once. I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. And it's up there. It's in the closet. That's the thing that's going to get packed today is my closet. And I actually found more stuff for my moving sale. The H6 has been sold. I thought I had a PreSonus AR8. It turns out I have a PreSonus AR12, which is a really cool. It's the thing I used before I got the Sound Devices MixPre 6. So it's one that records directly to an SD card and it streams. So it's kind of like the Rodecaster, but it's also a mixer and that whole 9 yards. And Jim is walking with a mask on, so that's not.
So never stopped me from joining the podcast.
That's fun. But I just found the mother all mixers that was wrapped up and so it wouldn't get dirty. And it's a Behringer like 18. It's a thing I got because it had 2 mixed minuses, and that's back when I was trying to do the phone call on this show. And I was like, I might end up having to take this one to, I don't know, Guitar Center or someplace and take a hit or sell it on eBay maybe. But
eBay probably.
Yeah, it'd be great for a band. It's got a huge number of inputs and all sorts of things like that. So Dan says when it comes to mic position for video is sort of like audio quality for podcasts. It really matters most if it's distracting. Exactly. I think that's really the bottom line for that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the podcasters I watch are moving around on sets, right? They're on they're building a house, or they're farming, or they're homesteading, or they're whatever, right? And it's just, you're not going to have a mic for that. That's just not, it's just not going to work that way. A lot of them are using shotgun mics on top of a really nice, DSLR. What is that? Camera, right?
Yeah.
DSLR. I think that's right. So they're getting some decent sound, but I've noticed the really good ones now are using a wireless lav of some kind, and they got it pinned. The ones that crack me up are the ones that have gotten complaints about the wind, because it's for whatever reason on YouTube, everybody complains about wind noise. It's like, you're outside, it's windy, but people complain. Sometimes I don't understand YouTube watchers. Like, what did you expect? But anyways,
right.
So they're bad. So one of the guys had a lav, and then he had a gigantic what do they call the windscreen that's
the dead cat.
The dead cat. He had a gigantic dead cat over it.
Nice.
Which you're kind of like, okay, I get the idea of what you're trying to do. Is that the best form?
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I don't know if that is less distracting or
Yeah.
more. Like, was the wind less distracting than the dead cat? Now that's literally the size sitting on your shoulder. So I've seen that too, where it's a lav, but man, it's sticking out. Like, hello, here I am.
Yeah.
What's the one? Somebody makes one that's a big box. What's the?
Oh, I think that's the Rode.
Is that the Rode one?
It's like this little square thing that you pin.
You kind of like pin it on your shirt or whatever, and it's like, that's a little big. Like, I don't know.
That was my thought. I was like, I get that it's wireless, but I'm like, shouldn't that be? And I guess the difference is you don't have, because usually you have a wireless pack and then you plug your mic into it. That's a lav that pins on you. So that, and this
make that the pack, make that the pack, and then run a wire that's got the microphone on the end.
That was my thought. I was like, they've just kind of like, instead of
Smarter
getting rid of the pack, they got rid of the mic. And I'm like,
smarter. I know. It's like just condensing the mic down into the pack, and you're like, not sure exactly that's what we were going for.
Yeah.
But I mean, apparently, I've seen it. I haven't seen it a lot, but I've seen it. So I don't know. The market will determine if that's a success or not. But yeah, I love the idea of thinning down the pack.
He says, Bang says Rode Wireless Go, but it also has a lav input.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
There you go. So it'll work either way.
Good.
Interesting.
I just don't see me using it, like trying to pin it on my shirt and using the mic that way, or even in a jacket. I'd want to hide that pack and then run a wire up.
Yeah.
Pin it somewhere.
Yeah. And then that's what Daniel's saying. You can pack it inside the clothing, not outside.
Right.
So you can see only the clip and then attach the through point. I got it. So
I still think the thing is ugly. I don't, you guys can explain it away. I still think it's ugly.
Well, I was thinking about something this morning, kind of changing gears. It's a little test I've been doing. I think the last time you and I were in the same room was it Podcast Movement, and I can't remember this.
2019, right?
Yeah. Not the Los Angeles thing, but the one before that. And do you remember the puppy
Orlando.
booth?
Yes. Oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's the question. Do you remember who the sponsor was?
The guys from Launchpad, right?
There you go. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You and Rob, everybody else was like, no, I just remember they had beer and puppies.
They did have beer, and it was day drinking. It made day drinking so easy.
Because I, how
no, right on.
Facebook is always like, this is what you did a year ago, and I was like, oh wow, I remember that.
Were we there a year ago? Now is that a year ago? Was Podcast Movement?
A year or two? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look, but it was like, here's what you were doing, and
I think it was Orlando, right?
Yeah, because that was the whole thing. They did it in Orlando, and
I think it was a great move. I think from a branding perspective, now it'd be interesting to see who's isn't somebody big behind them.
Oh yeah, Podcast One.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to get an update from them on how they're doing, because I haven't heard anything from. I have an account on Launchpad, and I still go over there, and they got some really interesting technologies that they're using to host.
That's probably why you remember.
Yeah, but you're probably right. You're probably right, because I log into it every week to upload Home Gadget Weeks there. But
because their whole thing was it's a free media host, but they're going to run ads against it, and you don't get anything for that.
Yeah, you do get to choose where the ad goes, and there's they've changed some things to make it a little bit better since the launch last year. It's not a bad platform. I'm not a big insert ads into my stuff. I go ad free because I want a complete listening experience, and so I don't do ads. But that's just me. They did it because they wanted to discover new
the next
podcasts to bring over to Podcast One, which I haven't heard much from Podcast One either. Right? Are they still a thing?
They're still a thing.
Right? Okay.
They've Jordan Harbinger. Trying to think who else is over at Podcast One, but. Yeah, that was just one of those things where that's what's fun is I have in a bookcase behind me, I have like all the programs from, all the different podcast movements and things like that. And I have one from the Portable Media Expo from like 2006. And it's hilarious looking at the sponsors because they're like, don't exist. Nope. Gone. Nope. Sorry.
It's a tough business.
It is a tough business.
You start early. It's a tough business. Like a lot of them. And you look at some of the ones that have been around a while. I won't mention any, but some of the technology is getting a little long in the tooth too. You see some of the web technology and some of the things they're doing. They've been around. I've been on Spreaker. In full disclosure, that Spreaker is our host for Gallup, and I haven't actually seen a lot of infrastructure changes. And maybe we don't need them. If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? And so maybe we don't need them. But man, on Spreaker, I haven't seen any real changes for almost the whole time I've been on them.
Yeah, if you think about it, they haven't really added.
Well, I mean, Libsyn has changed some things behind the scenes, some infrastructure stuff, but their front end is very, very similar to what it was 5 years ago. Like when you go in there, right? I think Podbean probably the same way. That it's another one of those that's probably still same. Blueberry's done some things to kind of try to change their front end, like their web stuff,
and the PowerPress they just redid because I know that's on my list of tutorials I need to redo. It's like
work.
Well,
the rewrite was like sometimes I think we rewrote it to rewrite it, or rewrite it to rewrote it.
Yeah, because I know there were.
You're like, oh man, I don't know this. There's some spots in here where the UI isn't very good. So
I'll have to look because I don't use. I think I only use PowerPress on the podcast review show. I mean, I use it like it's still in the school of podcasting, but I'm not using it for my feed. But I haven't really dug into. There's always like 5 or 6 tabs, and
it's funny what you get used to, right? And I was kind of used to the very text driven. It was very text heavy. It was very concise and consolidated. And I think it's been rewritten to be more mobile friendly, and that's great. But I actually access it still through my browser, and so it's the big boxes, and it's just a lot of space. And you kind of go, well, okay, okay. I was used to, you do something for 4 years, you get kind of used to it. 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong. But if you are a PowerPress user and you haven't logged into PowerPress in a while, or when I say logged in, I mean looked at the plugin on your site, you might want to go check it out. By the way, I think WordPress 5.5, is that right? Is out as well, and they continue to work. I think I got that right. They continue to work on Gutenberg and to try to fix the sins of the past on Gutenberg, right? Gutenberg is not, I mean, it's divided the WordPress community pretty down the middle. There's those that love it and those that hate it. They're not moving away from it, but they're trying to do some things to make it a little better for the folks that hate it.
Yeah.
So I need to jump in. 5.5's got some, if I'm getting that right, whatever the next update is, has got some updates to help with that. So I haven't dived into it yet.
I know the thing about the what do you call it? The old style, whatever it was, they had a plugin so that you could, even though Gutenberg was there,
Yeah.
the classic editor, that plugin got updated. And so I was like, oh, because that's my whole thing is they were supposed to be like, there was a deadline where they're like, we're going to pull that away eventually. So if you like the classic editor, don't get married to it because, you know, it's going away. And I was like, that's going to suck. So
that has really divided the WordPress community. That whole, like, why would you take it away? We're an open community. This was supposed to be built on some open standards. Why are you removing things? Why not support both Gutenberg and the classic for folks that want to do it? And there have just been some folks in the WordPress community who are just dead set on Gutenberg. Like they are just like, you're going to take this and you're going to like it. And this is the future and you need to get on it and stop complaining. And there are some folks who are like, I don't want to do block editing. It is 5.5. And by the way, there's a whole bunch of updates on plugins. So if you haven't looked at your WordPress instance in a while, today might be the day to go in and back it up, upgrade, and then make sure all your plugins are up to date.
Yeah, Daniel says most of the haters hate the fact that you have to use your mouse to do everything instead of continuing to type and things like that. Illiquity in the chat room brought up something I wanted to talk about. I forgot about this. Interesting talking about book publishing. Here's the thing. It's driving me nuts because I told my publisher, I said, look, I actually had her on the phone. I said, look, I realize we got COVID going on. And I said, if you have any bad news, I prefer bad news quick rather than no news, and let me find the bad news out from Amazon. I said, I'm a pretty easy guy to work with. Just if there's bad news, let me know and I can come about it. And to make a long story short, originally it was meant to be released in July. Then it got pushed to August and it was going to be September 28th. In fact, they emailed me, said, where can we send you your books? Because I get a handful for free. I'm sure they're charging me for them. But anyway, they have now updated Amazon to show that the release date was July 7th and it's out of stock. And my buddy Wayne Henderson, who does voiceover, sent me a thing and said, hey, I just got this email from Amazon that says, do you still want this book? And I'm like, that is not cool. I'm like, I got these people to buy the book and you're going to like make them reconfirm. So the book is coming out. I do believe it's September 28th. I don't know. I emailed them and said, like, pardon, like, but what's going on? Remember me saying, I don't mind bad news. Just let me know what it is. And so that's what's going on. And then Jim, what do you have here?
This is, I'm just showing what it looks like. So I just looked it up and yeah, July 7th. It's past that, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
And July 7th. And then it's saying out of stock, right? Right here, temporarily out of stock.
Yeah, which is very frustrating. And then
order for it though, Dave. I mean, let's go back.
Well, let me
I paid for it, and I do have an order.
Yeah. Well, you might get an email that looks like this. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not. And it says, we're encountering a delay in shipping your order. We'll make every effort to get the delayed item to you as soon as possible. If you still want the item, please confirm below. We apologize for the delay. And then you have a button that says, I still want this item. And I was just like, you're killing me. Like, stop. So I don't know what's going on. Illiquity wants to pop in and talk some books. What's going on?
Hey guys, how's it? Happy Saturday morning.
Happy Saturday morning.
Oh shoot, can you hear me okay? Because I don't have my mic on.
No, you're good. You're a little echoey, but we can handle it.
Lav on that'll help us.
Yeah, let me grab my thing over here. So I wanted to talk about book publishing because one of the interesting things, I'm actually doing a book that goes along with my podcast right now, and one of the interesting things. Hold on a second. Let me throw this on so you guys don't hear all my echo.
Here, let me mute you while you do that. Give me a thumbs up when you're
hunting cabin. It looks like a hunting cabin. Oh, hold on. You'll need to switch over.
Are you good to go?
You'll need to.
That's actually just a cabin that we built in the house. It's like it was for the kids when they were little, but now our youngest is 21, so they're all off and not playing in the cabin anymore. But yeah, exactly. Well, actually, it's my office. But one of the things I wanted to talk about book publishing that I found out that was pretty interesting that I did not know, and I'm really glad I'm self-publishing my book, is that when you go to a publisher, if you decide to choose to go the publisher route, if you don't sell their quota of your book, they will discontinue selling your book, but then you have no rights to sell it. So if you put like years into writing your book and after a year you're not reaching their quota, you're done. Like you can't sell your book. You have no rights to it whatsoever.
I need to check my contract because I don't
Happy
see. I don't remember.
Saturday, Dave.
I'm like, I don't remember anything about that. I just remember there are a couple things in there, but it was pretty straightforward. I don't remember anything about a quota. So that would be.
If you want my lawyer to check your contract, I will be happy to send you his name. He's amazing at business contracts, and I have him always read all of mine. But yeah, that's one of the things. And the other thing with a traditional publisher is they'll give you like a upfront money to spend on your book, but apparently everybody says you spend like twice that amount just on advertising and stuff. So because you have to sell a certain amount of books and then you have to buy a certain amount of books from them. Like you might have to buy, okay, so you don't have that with your hybrid?
No, not for me. Well, the cool thing is you got to remember, as much as they're a publisher, and they even threw the words Simon and Schuster at me. Like we published through Simon and Schuster, and I was like, oh, Simon and Schuster. But in the end, you're in control. Like you don't need them. You really don't. You know, it's like, because the people that are going to find this book, number one, if you talk to anybody in the book industry, do not expect your publisher to promote your book. They're going to put out a press release, but other than that, it's up to you. And I'm like, okay, so that was just one where I just kind of was like, nope, sorry, nope. Like the audio rights, which I'm finding out, I own 100% of the audio rights. They get nothing if I sell an audiobook, but it turns out you get raped by Audible and Amazon on that. Like they just take massive amounts of that. So I'm actually thinking, I bought a thing on AppSumo that allows you to sell digital downloads. And I might, for like the first 3 months, put it out on that for like the super fans who just can't wait to get Dave's book. And you have to listen through their app, which is kind of a thing. But I was like, let's try that for a month where I can get a much bigger chunk of the pie. And then once those are done, throw it on Audible and Amazon and then whole 9 yards. That assumes that Dave will find time sometime between now and the end of September to record his audiobook, which ain't happening with this whole moving thing going on. But yeah, you're on the right track though. When you get a contract, if you don't know exactly what you're looking at and you've taken the right steps, you got a lawyer to look at it. Because
Liquidy, did you self-publish or you're going to self-publish?
I am in the process of self-publishing. So I just went through, I have all my stuff written out and I went through my script twice. I still have to finish my chapter 18 and I'm in the process of formatting my pictures and putting everything in my book. And then I'm sending it off to the formatter. So that's my next step. So I actually bought a sponsor booth at a gluten-free conference, virtual conference. And at the end of September, and I laid down $750 for it. So that's a huge, I really need to get this done because I don't want that to be a pre-launch.
Yeah. No, you want to have product there, right? To be able to do that. And then how much do you think you spent or what's the budget on self-publishing for you?
So for me, because what I did was, even though I help people ghostwrite all the time, but I got a coach for me because I needed somebody like to keep me accountable, because if I don't have somebody being like, we're meeting in 2 weeks and you have this done, like I'm really good at getting the content out and I'm really good at writing and I love writing, but because I write for a living, so I usually put my stuff last. So that's my challenge. But I spent $3,000 on a coach, on a coaching program. And then I spent probably, let me think, I'm probably going to spend between $500 and $800 formatting my book. And then, I probably spent about $300 on people like doing research for me. So just like basic research that like anybody could do. And then I took that research and wrote it into my book. So I probably spent about $4,500 so far. And I'm probably gonna do like a little book trailer. So I'm probably gonna spend a few $100s on my book trailer. So it's probably about around $5,000.
5,000.
Yeah. But I have complete control of all of my stuff. Like I don't have anybody telling me like when to publish or what I can and can't create. So that I really love. And the other thing with a traditional, because I know Dave has a hybrid, but with a traditional book publisher, you basically give them all your stuff and you have like no control over like what pictures go in or anything. And I don't like that as a creative. I like to put what pictures I have and because some of them are very special to me. So I want them in certain chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the great thing about self-publishing. Of course, the downside is you have to do all the work yourself. So luckily I have a good, people on Fiverr that I use all the time. And I found a couple other really great people to use as far as helping me with publishing my book. But I definitely would recommend getting someone to help you with different steps of the project that is not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, Chris says writing a book equals climbing a mountain backwards for free. And for the record, writing the book is not the hard part.
No.
The hard part is getting people to listen to it. When I did my first version of this book, it was called More Podcast Money. I'm going to say I had 1,000 into it. I $300 on the cover, $700 on the editors. I had one editor who edited it, and then I went through and had a second editor go through and edit it, and then I formatted it as a Kindle format, upload the image, and and that was it. So
yeah,
and that's the thing where having somebody format, make it look pretty. Not that mine looked ugly, but it was text, and I had headings and text. I'm like, I don't really need much more than that. Over the years, I don't know how long that book's been out, probably 5 or 7 years. I think I made $500 profit, but you're making $9 a month for years, and it's like, and I found that if I didn't do my More Podcast Money podcast, I was selling nothing. So the whole you're on Amazon, along with 8 billion other books and, everything else. So
well, the nice thing is that I have the only how to travel gluten-free book on.
Yeah.
Because there's other people who are like travel gluten-free to Paris, which is great unless you're not going to Paris. So
right,
or if you're going to Paris, but if you're not, then it doesn't help you. So I'm the only how to travel book on there.
So the COVID situation's helping you a little bit because it's slowed down travel some while you're writing the book. So you hopefully by the time you're ready to go, right, we're traveling again, or there's some semblance of travel.
Yeah, but the other thing is I've heard from my book coach too that apparently online book sales are down. But for me, I'm not really too worried about it because I know people are starting to get out and just do camping. Camping is safe because you're with your family and you're in the middle of nowhere. And so I always tell people, I always have the disclaimer, if your doctor tells you don't go out, don't go out, that kind of thing. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to mention about book publishing too is that if you have a podcast and you can get transcripts of all your stuff, getting the content is a piece of cake. The hard part is finding an editor and getting it formatted, and your paperback format is different than your ebook format. So you have to pay somebody more to do both, which is what I'm doing because I want to do a paperback because it's going to be a guide. So I want it to be someone they can take it with them on their vacation.
Yeah, Jim Harold says, I've been traditionally published and self-published. He says for him, he likes self-publishing, and we'll see. Like I said, I'm trying to withhold my opinion until this whole thing is over.
And then you're going to say self-published, Dave.
And then I'm probably going to say self-published. Yeah,
gonna say I think about writing books, and then I'm like, no, I think I'll go get a root canal. That sounds more fun.
Nice.
Well,
awesome.
Well, Collison, if you ever need help, just give me a call.
Will do.
You know where to find me.
Will do.
All right, Lucany.
All right, guys. Have a great Saturday.
Thanks for jumping in. Great to see you.
Yeah,
take care. Take care.
But
I'm never going to write a book. You guys talk about this, and I get the, well, maybe I should. I start thinking through some ideas, and then I just go, that is not I have trouble seeing, I can't do something unless I can see in my mind how I'm going to get it done. And so for podcasting, I know exactly what needs to happen for all this. If somebody says, hey, I want to start a new podcast, right, I know every step and everything that needs to be done. I can see it completely. Every time I think about the book writing process, there's parts of it I can't see. And I know I could do it. I just don't want to.
Yeah. What you have to do is come up with your topics. Those are your chapters. And then you come up with subtopics that reinforce the chapter. And then you just keep expanding. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wow, I got 25,000 words. So
hey, I'm kind of thirsty. Speaking of books.
Yeah.
I don't know how we make
I
that
also
transition.
am thirsty. I've been talking all morning, but
yeah, let's, I think we have a mid-show pour.
We do have a mid-show pour, and that is brought to you by our awesome supporters. And you can find them over at askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And if you are looking for some one-on-one consulting at a discounted rate, I'm still looking for the teacher's pet. That is available. That one, if you go to this is through Patreon. That one you have to like scroll down and click on like see all. I think that's why that's probably not getting a lot of traction. But anyway, we always like to thank our $20 supporters, and we're talking about Carl White at lifeinthecarolinaspodcast.com, Glenn the Geek Hebert at horseradionetwork.com, Josh Liston over at tipsoftheslung.com, Kim Craggy at toastmasters101.net, Shane from spybrary.com, Ed Sullivan at soniccupcake.com, Max Trescott at aviationnewstalk.com, Greg over at debtshepherd.com. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, it's super easy. Just go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, and you'll see the links right there. But thanks to our awesome supporters. But yeah, it's interesting. I spoke this morning at PodFest, and I did the traditional, it was like 20 minutes and then 10 minutes of Q&A. And I jammed about 35 minutes into 20 minutes because I got done. And Chris is like, he goes, I'm glad we're all podcasters because you were talking at 3X. And that was just more content. So, but it was fun.
Is that this weekend? That's going on this weekend?
That actually was all last week, and today is the last day.
Okay.
And they did I don't know what the goal was, but they were shooting for like 25,000 or 5,000 or so many podcasters, and they're counting them with there's a Guinness Book of World Records person there. And I think it had to do with how many people joined via the Whova app or something of that nature. But from what I understand, they got the goal, whatever, because there wasn't one. It's not like we were breaking one, we were setting one. And so, but this will bring up a great question. Gabrielle says, wait, I had the wrong one. Is Spotify hard to work with? No, you can actually, if you have a media host, if you're using Libsyn, we have a destination you can set up. If not, you can go to Podcasters with an S, podcasters.spotify.com. They have their own little gizmo there, and you can either claim your show. So if you're using a host that already submitted it for you, you'd want to reclaim it. If you've had nobody submit your show, then you can submit it there via Spotify. So, but no, they're not hard. None of them are really hard to work with, but that does bring up Amazon, and there's Amazon and Audible. And have I mentioned this already? I swear I talked to somebody earlier.
Well, we were talking about it in pre-show.
Pre-show. Yeah. If you're using Libsyn, because Amazon sent out an email to everybody saying, hey, here's the button to click on to submit your show to Amazon. If you're on Libsyn, do not use that. I'm going to say that again. If you're on Libsyn, do not use that, because you'll end up with your show in Amazon twice. Because in Libsyn, we made it super easy. You go to destinations, add Amazon Music /Audible. You, I think, have to pick your country and approve. And James Crinlin has been doing some fun stuff. He's looking into the whatever you call it, the agreement. And apparently you're not allowed to say anything bad about Amazon in your podcast. And I was like, have fun policing that. So, because I'm like, I know we had whatever, probably back in episode 112 where I got kicked off of Amazon. I don't think I was exactly complimentary about that whole process. So we'll see.
No, I wonder how are they gonna scan all these? Do you think? Are they gonna run?
I don't know.
They're going to run a AI over them to see what people are saying. They must be planning on it. And there must be some kind of tool inside of Audible that they don't, and it makes sense that you don't want to be publishing a podcast that is speaking poorly of you.
Yeah.
Right. I get it. I mean, it's not open, but it's not transparent. Right? But I get it, So that submission process too, you can, they have a, for Audible, they just have a link you can go to, and it says, it's kind of just a form. It says, how many podcasts do you have? And you click 1 to 10 or more. Then it gives you some forms, and you just put the title of your podcast in the RSS feed in, answer a few questions, and submit it. I don't know. I'm assuming there's a review process going in on all this, that before they notify you. They're like, it's going to be a while. It's super vague. Yeah. It was like when Spotify was first doing this. It was super vague on what they were doing.
The only cool thing about Spotify was it was live. This is like submit it, and when we roll it out, it'll be there. But there's no and we're rolling it out on this date.
Mystic Mac. What's that Spotify address? Sorry, hold on.
I think it's podcasters with an S .spotify.com. And if that's not it, then it's without an S.
I'll keep looking.
But Mystic Max says, I had a podcast on Spotify, changed hosting, and it went missing. there's that whole. So what you need to do now is whoever your hosting is, get your RSS feed there, go into podcasters.spotify.com, find your show, and then update the RSS feed. I did an episode about this a little while back. So you basically changed the channel and didn't tell Spotify, oh, I'm over here now. Same thing with Stitcher. If you're on Stitcher, you have to manually go in and change Stitcher, Spotify. I think everything else will follow a 301 redirect. Plus, you want to redirect your old feed. So your old feed, think of it like if you, like I'm moving, and when I eventually move out of my apartment, I will go to the United States Postal Service and say, hey, I'm moving from here. My new address is here. And with podcasting, that change of address thing is called a 301 redirect. And you have to take your old feed and say, hey, if somebody goes to blah, 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 .rss, put them over here. And that way you take your audience with you. There are some services that will not offer that. And if that is the case, please let me know because I'm making a list. But there's a free service, Shout Engine will not do a 301 redirect. So you don't want to build your podcast over there. Plus they're free. And from what I understand, their support is non-existent. So other than that, it's a great host. So
I think back to the Audible bit, they made it very, very clear in their terms because I skimmed through their terms. They are not downloading one time and streaming to everybody on Audible. It's a pass through for them. So
right.
I don't know if you said that already. Maybe did.
No, that's good to know. Yeah.
But it is a pass through for them. So that's one of those, I think, and there is some appearance that they learned from Spotify.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, the
see.
submission process is clear. The terms were pretty clear. I mean, as clear as terms can be, right?
Well, Ross says you also can't say anything bad about any product sold on Amazon. So any shows that review gears or books, well, sorry. Yeah. And I'll be interested to see again, how are they going to police this? How do you listen?
55 million people, right? Which is not gigantic, just to be honest. 55 million globally is not a gigantic audience. So to be pigeonholed in a walled garden like it's going to be, at least initially, that's what it looks like, to have those kinds of terms and conditions put on top of you as far as content goes. It's not for most people. For most podcasters, this isn't going to be like you do it because you're supposed to. You submit because you shouldn't. I mean, because you should.
Right.
Whether you stay on it or you actually get anybody from it is going to be super questionable. I don't see that Audible audience being a boom for podcasters.
Yeah, there are a lot of devices. If you think about it, the woman in the tube now will be able to play your podcast, so that'll make things
through
easier.
Audible, though. I mean, you still have to go into Audible.
Well, or Amazon Music. That's the thing we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. But I did see there was an interesting article from James Cridlin at Pod News where a show had been removed from Anchor, and it turns out there's a few of these where people are taking popular shows and importing them into Anchor. And then Anchor, almost like Shazam, was like, hey, this already exists, in this case on Libsyn. And so they pulled the show. They're like, wait, you're stealing somebody's show. Because that's part of the terms of service is this is my content. And somehow, we don't know how, but this was the guy that was using it as a test. And he's like, hey, and not only did they remove his show, they removed his account. He couldn't even log in anymore. So, because
wait a minute. So let me make sure I understand. So I'm stealing somebody else's show,
right?
Putting it on Anchor for the purposes of putting ads against it and and benefiting from the ads. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So you're going to get your penny a download from Anchor, and which is legit. It's $10 per 1,000 downloads.
Don't people do that on YouTube all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. And if you think about it, all the Joe Rogan slices and things like that. So, and also people are still getting massive amounts of what do you call it? Pull down notices from the RIAA. So
Banks says it was their own show, but a replacement fill-in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that was the part that was weird. Like he wasn't stealing the show. In fact, if you think about it, it kind of looked like he was moving. And maybe just the fact that he didn't put in a 301 redirect.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Well, okay. So the situation I was saying is completely different. That's still happening, by the way. People are stealing other people's shows, putting them on YouTube. Never thought about doing that, like with Anchor or with some of those services that and turn the ads on and just see. I mean,
Yeah.
What's it cost you just to steal somebody else's feed?
Yeah. Nothing. And what you're hoping is when somebody then Googles or searches for
Right.
the Office Ladies,
Right.
they'll find your show, subscribe, and
Yeah, that's the YouTube game. Anyways, they play that game gets played 1,000 times on YouTube. I swear they must, like, these things must pop up and get banned as fast as they pop up on YouTube, but I see them all the time. They are just ripping stuff off.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's basically what the article says is he's like, hey, I just imported it and blah, blah, blah. I think he went to bed. I don't know if it was even 24 hours. I'd have to go back and reread it, but it was quick. And he turned around. It's like, where'd my show go? So,
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see. Mystic Max said, I did redirect Apple, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn. We're fine. No problem. Spotify is the only one I'm having trouble with. So yeah, go to podcasters.spotify.com and you can see stats in there. That's one thing that Spotify has is they have demographic information, because when you sign up for Spotify as a listener, they then pass that along to the podcaster. So you can see that your audience is, aged 35 to 45 and they listen to a lot of Ed Sheeran and, whatever.
Now, why would you pick on Ed Sheeran?
Because that's what's in my profile. I remember like, Ed Sheeran, really? I'm like, because I don't listen to Ed Sheeran, but it was when I looked at my stats, I was like, okay, because when I think Ed Sheeran, I don't even think middle-aged white guy. I think 30-year-old, female. That guy has a huge female following because he's all writing these great love songs and blah, blah, blah. And Jim, are you locked up? He is. There you go. Aliquity loves Ed Sheeran. So, Jim, if you're with us, you're locked up. It's the Jim's Locked Up music. Yeah. So, anyway, while we're waiting for Jim to come along, here is a message I got from, let me see 1 second here. He said, trying to make it obvious, not obvious that I'm looking for, here it is, the private chat. Jim, you're not here. Hector says, what? Okay. Rising Star. And then he has a show name that, here, let me remove Jim Collison #1.
Yeah, I was going to share the screen with you, and Chrome just.
You were very happy though.
It's
I was
good.
Like, wow,
at least
he's just smiling, and I was
at least
like,
it was a good. At least it was a good facial. Yeah, just like Chrome just exploded.
yeah, because it looks like you're sharing a screen of nothing right now. It's just white. It's like it's thinking. So
and it does. It's weird. Yeah. Well, I won't. I'm not going to do. For the rest of the show, I'm not going to touch anything.
All right. Well, this was a question from Facebook. Hector says Rising Star, and I cannot read the name of his show. But he says, I have a Rodecaster already and a Procaster mic. Should I upgrade to the Shure SM7B? Will it make an audio difference? Is it worth the money? An SM7B, I want to say, is $400, maybe more. It's one of those. It's like, yikes, that's a lot of money. Now, on the other hand, when I, am around one, I talk into it, I go, ooh, that does sound yummy. But for me, I'm always, there are two reasons. Number one, if your audience is complaining that your audio sounds bad or too thin or too echoey or something like that, that's when you look for something to change. And then the other one is for some reason, you just hate the sound of your voice and you would be more confident if you like the sound of your voice. To which I say, like you were mentioning earlier, Jim, that the Q2U was a little too bassy. And you said, if I wanted to, I could maybe tweak out some of the bass on a mixer. There are other ways to fix this before sending, spending another $400 or $500 on a microphone. And Bangs in the chat room is saying he's not a big fan of the pod mic. I just love it as a weapon. I keep one in my back pocket at all times. So if somebody comes at me, I'm just
It's like a grenade.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jim?
I don't know. I don't know if I have any.
You just changed the mic. So it's like you change it and you're like,
yeah.
But that's an expensive experiment.
It
Unless
is.
you're getting,
And to go up from here, right? So ATR, my next, I think what I'm going to try and do is track down a 58, an SM58. Because I've talked about that. That's also in the $99 price range.
Mhm.
and would fit nicely along the ATR 2000. It's also one where, like, I'm not one to test something for like 10 minutes and then have an opinion.
Right.
Like, I've had the Q2U on here for 5 weeks, 6 weeks. In fact, I put it on and didn't say anything just to see if anybody would notice. Ross noticed a little bit today when he jumped in, but Ross, I think you've heard this before. So, I think my next one would be to try and get my hands on a 58 and switch it out, because I've said before, I like an SM58. That's it's a $99 mic. It's super durable. In the setup that I have here is set up for it. I mean, I'm going through a traditional mixer. I don't need USB. So I think that'll be my next before I jump, because the next jump, right, is a RE320. It's a high LPR 400, LPR 40. Sorry. I don't know why I said 400. I'm having a little trouble with my brain this morning. And then the SM7B.
The funny thing about, for me,
that hair, Dave, is looking fantastic.
I got lots of it.
I like it. You're gonna be able to do a man bun here in a few.
I'm picturing me with a man bun.
I think it looked good, by the way. I'm in favor.
Here's the 2100X. Right, that's the new AT20, and then I can always tell this is 58. I don't know if you can tell.
Yep.
But it's all dented.
Oh yeah.
And this thing's been through, the ringer and then some, but it still works like a champ. So, here, let me just do a live
Liquidy. The only mics I've had are an ATR 2100 and now this Q2U. So I have stayed on that lower end. I've resisted going to the higher end because I have a average guy podcast, and
That's right.
Okay, go ahead.
So
Dave.
this is a 58.
Yeah.
So I hear a little more low end, maybe.
Yeah.
And and it's, again, the great thing about it is it's how, if I say please bring pizza pronto in honor of Bandrew, that's his popping P thing.
Yeah.
So
it's hard. It's hard going from that RE320 to that 58.
Because this is
Yeah, that's a whole different sound. It sounds like the 320 has a fuller range.
Could be
on it. And now, okay, side by side, because that's what we just did. The 58 feels like you're more enclosed. It's kind of, I felt all of a sudden, I felt like I went into a box to listen to you. Like it just didn't have the full sound. Now, that being said, if we did a whole show like that, would it make a difference? Because once you start getting used to it, yeah,
that's it. Never know. But and then Bank says the 58A uses a neodymium magnets and has a high opus roll-off, high pass roll-off. So it'll be interesting. But and you can see here come the mic recommendations. There's tons to play with.
Yeah, well, and Blue has one too. Blue has it's $100 and it's this style. And the problem is, Dave, you go into this black hole of when you start doing this, you just go into a black hole of microphones and
never ending.
I'm just not a review guy in that way. I just don't want. I don't want to have a box full of microphones when we're done.
Like I said, I have 3 sitting over there that were in a coffee cup, and I was like, holy cow, what are you going to do? So, and you could keep trying, and some you like better and some you like more. And, it's a matter of, do you like the way you sound? And if you do, stop looking and go back to making content or things of that nature. So, but
I think, and maybe a final note before we get out of here, I think ask your audience what they think.
Bingo.
Right.
That my friend, that is a good answer right there, because you might think you sound horrible and your audience is like, no, I don't think it at all. Dan wants to know, do I have any EQ? I have right now big bottom and something on this particular mic through the Rodecaster. That's the problem, is I could probably turn that off on the 58 and it might sound.
You probably could. Yeah, you might want to
maybe we'll play with that in post. But so thanks to the see, again, this is where the microphone's in my way. I'm like, I need to see. Okay, 47 seconds. So that means we have 30 seconds. Thanks to the chat room. If you're here live, stick around. We got some post show coming up. Jim, what's coming up on the averageguy.tv?
Yeah, we spent some time. Kevin Schoonover is on the show, a big friend of the network, and talk about all kinds of free apps that are available for productivity and some other things around your PC. So it'll post a little bit later today, theaverageguy.tv.
And on the School of Podcasting, I'm going to be talking about, should you charge your guest to be on your show, and why that may work and why it may not. But stick around for some post show coming right up after this fun-filled music. Yeah, for the record, I'm loving. My hair has not been this long.
I know,
since I was like 15.
Yeah,
I had to think about it.
I keep rolling.
And it used to be when it was 15, it was wide. I mean, it was, and this is like just kind of like just going down. And I was like, because I was like, well, I'll get a haircut when it looks really bad, and I'm like, don't know if it looks great, but it's not embarrassingly,
it's growing in nicely. You need to kind of do the ZZ Top beard though to match it.
Yeah, I had that going for a while, and then I kind of chimed it back.
Because you can, Dave. You're working at home. You're not really going out that much, right? You should just totally go for it.
Yeah. What do you do when you're in a podcast slump? You're not motivated to put out your next episode.
Fake it.
Fake it.
You just gotta. Well, okay. You don't have to. Right? Just take a week off. Like last week when I was in Colorado, it was so great. I remember Thursday night canceling the show, publicly on Twitter. Hey guys, I'm not going to be out there tonight. I felt so good to take a week off. Like I just celebrated. I was like, yeah, this is great. I don't have to do a podcast over the weekend. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do all the things I have to do. Take a week off, celebrate it, have a good time, go do something different. If it's deeper than that, like if it's a deeper motivation, like, I don't know if I ever want to do this again, take a month off and tell your audience, hey, I'm taking a month off.
Yeah.
Like that's it. We're coming up. Home Gadget Geeks is coming up on 500. And, I think I'm going to celebrate, actually it's coming up before that, it's coming up on 10 years. So like December 4th, I think is my 10-year anniversary for that show. We won't be to 500 yet, but we're getting pretty close. And I'm considering taking a whole month, like having a big blowout. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Followed by 4 weeks of no podcast. It's just,
Go listen to any of the 500 episodes I did before.
I got plenty. If you're going to unsubscribe because I'm taking 4 weeks off, you probably shouldn't be subscribed anyways. So I think you got to kind of evaluate that and be like, if you're struggling with motivation, try a week. If it doesn't change after a week, try 4 weeks. Don't say a month. That sounds a long time. 4 weeks sounds shorter than a month. So say 4 weeks. I'm going to take 4 weeks off. If after 4 weeks it's not there, Dave, I think you have to kind of close it up.
Yeah, that's one where the my very first podcast for musicians, it sputtered, and I wasn't letting anybody know. I would just go, I'd have a show, and then I'd skip 2 weeks, then I'd do another show, and I'd do another show, and then I'd skip 2 weeks. It was just all over the place, and I was just very much like, I can't say, pay attention to your audience, be professional, pay your bar tab again. I'm like, I've just said all there is to it. And it's either that. The other thing you might want to do is go to Google, type in your case, gluten-free blog. There may be other resources, because you're kind of like, for me, I had a show that it was getting harder and harder to find something I hadn't talked about. And I would spend 3 hours to come up with a topic that I was like, all right, that'll do. And I wasn't excited about it. And it was just a case where I was like, all right, I think I'm done, because I can't spend 4 hours looking for a topic to talk about for 10 minutes that I'm not excited about. And I just went, I remember that one. I took some time. I'm like, there's got to be other resources I can find that there's something. And I just looked and I was like, no. And I'm like, well, I've been doing this show for 9 years. I'm like, yeah, that's probably why you're running out of things to say.
Yeah.
And so that's where you either, like Jim was saying, say, hey, I'm going to take a break, come back in a month and see what it's like. If you guys have anything you would like me to talk about in the future, feel free to, here's my contact page, find out what they're doing. And
or change things up. Like when I'll be honest, I am super sick of post-production. Like right now, I just don't want to do it. I'm fortunate at work. I have a team that works with me on this. Right. And so at work, I get away with not having to do post-production, which is great. But Home Gadget Geeks and Cyber Frontiers, they need post-production, and there's one guy to do it, and it's me. So what I did is I started breaking it up. started breaking up the post-production steps over the course of a couple days. One, I put this ridiculous pressure on myself to have it produced by, we record Thursday, to have it done and produced by 4 this show on Saturday. Okay, who made that a thing?
Right.
This guy did. This guy made it a thing. Nobody was asking for it. The audience wasn't expecting it. There was no rules that say I had to have it out by then. So I just took that restriction off. I'm like, okay, it's going to be sometime over the weekend. And then I had one that stretched till Monday. And I'm like, well, okay, it's Monday. I published it on Monday. Nobody said a word, right? And so I started thinking, okay, let's take that ridiculous thing off. You know, I still have one. It's mostly done, but I still have to publish it. I'll publish it later today. It's not a big deal, right? Then I started breaking up the steps a little bit. So I do a little bit of post on Friday night. I do a little bit. I come and write the show notes Saturday morning before this show. I publish it later in the afternoon or in the evening on Saturday. If it goes over to Sunday, say something happens Saturday night, goes over to Sunday morning, not a big deal. If I still don't feel like it on Sunday, I'll do it Sunday afternoon. Like, it's not a big deal, right? And it has helped me continue to stay consistent by not putting so much pressure on myself. Like, gotta. I was just driving myself to some insane timelines.
Well,
So Liquidy, if you're maybe you can break it up a little bit and just make it. Sometimes you just got to sit down and do it, right?
yeah.
You just got to sit down, find that thing. For me, it was show notes. Like, find that thing that's stopping you. I bet most of the process is fine. I bet there's that one thing that's hanging you up that you're dreading. Find a way to get around it.
Well, the other thing too is, especially with post show stuff, it's a seesaw. So the more planning you do, the less editing you have to do. But the less you don't take time to go through your checklist or whatever, then you're going to end up with more things to edit. And that's the tricky part. I know I was doing something. I just recorded an episode of a show I called Your Podcast Consultant. It's a little short thing. And I just tripped over my tongue, and I just sat there for 10 seconds, which is a long time to sit there and do nothing. And then I picked up where I left off and kept going. And it took me like 2 seconds to edit that, because I was like, oop, big break in the middle. There it is. Highlight it, get it out, boom, push the 2 together, and we're done. So it's tough. But yeah, it's one of those things where there are times when you're like, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes you just got to grind it. You know, you just got to kind of be like, okay, I'm just going to get this done. I'm just going to get it done, or change the rules. Like, okay, I had big pressure on show notes. And so, you know, I was also finding I couldn't write, like, I have this opening paragraph that I write for my show notes. And for whatever reason, Dave, post 8 p.m. on any evening is not a time for me to write. Like, it just isn't. It's not there. And what I kind of found out is, if I tackle that thing first thing in the morning, like first thing, I'm much more inclined. So as I get up, I kind of think, okay, what did we do? And I get a few thoughts in my mind. And if I just get down here and write it right then, it's a lot better. So I've even find times of the day when they're better to do. It's better to do things.
Yeah, because 8 to 10 is when I come alive and I'm good to go.
PM
Yeah.
or AM?
You know, after dinner, I come up,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's pound this out. And I turn off Twitter and Facebook and everything and just blow through it. And I'm good to go. It's after 11 and then midnight is when I'm like, I'm still ready to go, but my brain's like, no, we're ready for bed. And that's when I start making mistakes. Craig says, after publishing weekly for years, I would kind of hate to take a break. I hate to break the chain. I get that. That's kind of why I do mine.
Yeah.
So she says, I might need to move my publish day to Wednesday. Yep. Sometimes life creeps in. You're like, oh, you know, I did a thing.
Feels good sometimes to do that, to delay it, right? It's like, if you think about it and it feels good, that may be an indication it's time to make a change.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. I saw another one in here. Gary was saying, I really want to develop something for my own brand, but by the end of the week, I'm so burned out working on content. What I do to avoid this is Evernote. Evernote is my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get an idea anywhere, because there are times I'm at Libsyn and I'll be answering a ticket. I'm like, ooh, this would be a good episode. Evernote, click. I have a notebook called Podcast Ideas. And that way later, when I'm like, don't know what I'm going to do or whatever. And there are times, if, you know, back when, I don't know, you're someplace out in public and you're in line, I'll sit there and start doing research on my phone because I got nothing. I could do research, or I could stare at the cover of People magazine for 15 minutes while I'm in line. And then anything I find goes into Evernote, so that when it's time to do the episode, I just pull up Evernote and I'm like, oh, here we go. So
Great tool for that.
Yeah.
My most productive time is on a plane. Like I sit down in a seat and I do not know what, maybe it's because of it was because of the isolation, or that I couldn't do anything else, or I didn't have a computer in front of me. I mean, I had a laptop and some of those kinds of things, but limited connectivity, whatever. But my brain would just explode with ideas. And so what I would find is I'd sit on a plane and I'd just start taking notes of things I was thinking of. And I'd get to the end of a flight and I have 2 or 3 pages of things that I wanted to do differently, right? Or things I needed to get done, or things I wanted to do. I do not know why. Now it's been since December since I've been on a plane. So, that had been a thing spring and fall for me pretty consistently. I traveled, half a dozen times during those times. I'm kind of missing that. So this week, as I was driving to Colorado, it was that same, I was 10 hours in the driver's seat. I was getting that same thing. And so I was taking some notes and trying to remember some things. I didn't do as good of a job as I could have. I should have taken more notes, but there was some things, some podcasts that I listened to that sparked some ideas, some things, it's finding that, recognizing those moments of saying, yeah, I'm most creative in this moment. It might be midnight, might be 8, might be first thing in the morning. Finding that for yourself, I think, is super important.
For me, the thing I've learned, and it's really, I would say in the last 5 years, when I hear myself go, you should probably write that down or you're going to forget it, I now write it down. Because when I go, no, I got it, I almost always, I had a mic stand at the top of my stairs. It was leaning on this little railing we have, and it fell down, and I stubbed my toe on it like 3 times. And every time I'm like, that's going to kill somebody, And so the other day I'm going to go down the steps and I turn the corner, and of course there's a mic stand there now. And I just about like took a nosedive down the steps. And I was like, okay, idiot, you've told yourself this like 3 times now. How about you pick up the mic stand and put it where it's supposed to belong? So that's something I find, because there's nothing worse than when you have this great idea and you're like, oh, I got to remember this. And then you don't write it down. You're like, later, you're like, wait, what was it? It was something with the thing, and it started with a Y. I don't know. But Bangs has an interesting comment here. I don't know what he's talking about. Did you see the change in podcast related subs on Reddit last week? I am not here's the thing. If there was a Reddit 101 class on like Udemy, I would take it, because I go over and I know there's like rules and regulations on how often you can post, but I'm like, I don't understand the culture of Reddit at this point, and I don't know enough people. Everybody does the same thing. Oh yeah, it's a cool place. There's a lot of people, kind of an ugly interface, but it's Reddit. And there's a lot of cool people, and I'm like, oh, and I'll go over maybe twice a month and answer a question or something like that. But I have I'm not over there enough to notice if something would change. So how about you, Jim? Are you much of a Reddit person?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
It's not a very nice community, just to be 100% honest. So them and YouTube have probably the worst offenders. Trolls. Yeah, trolls. That's good. That's a good way of saying it. So I'm just not a huge fan of that. And so I was in it early on, and I was like, I don't know if I need this. I just don't. It's like reading YouTube comments. Like, I don't know if I really need to do this. I could, and there's some helpful things in there. I'm sure there's a lot of great helpful things in there. It's just not a community that I'm typically excited to go to. So my favorite are curated communities where people, and I listen, I know on Reddit there's admins who do stuff and whatever. I'm just not a fan of it.
Iliquity says, hey peeps, Apple is using the first paragraph of your show notes for search now. Asterisk, if you don't put in Apple summary. So make sure to have the details of your specific episode in the first part. Yeah, some people are saying, because you'll see where if you have your first paragraph, and in some cases, because it's Apple and it's not consistent, God bless them, and you'll have the first 3 sentences of your show notes, then you'll have a player, and then you'll have your full description. And the reason for that is you didn't put anything in the Apple summary. So Apple goes, well, we need something. Let's just grab the first couple sentences of their thing and put it there. So people will email me at Libsyn and go, why is my description in there twice? And I'm like, because you didn't fill in. And originally, Apple had said they were going to de-emphasize the Apple summary because it's confusing, and they apparently are not. So now I always tell people like a sentence or two is all you need in that little summary thing. But Apple search still continues to just. I'll just leave it at that, basically. So Kyle says his best time to work is midnight. Of course, Kyle has little ones, or maybe not so little ones, but he has children. And when the house is quiet, yeah, I remember when I was in college, that's when I did all my podcasting, because I was at my brother's house. We had, little kids ish, 7 to 9-ish kind of, who were not always quiet. And when they went to bed, it was like, cool. I just had to wait for the furnace to turn off.
Like magic. It's the magic moment, right? When those things settle down.
So
it's like what he had said earlier, that time on a plane, you're kind of forced to the distractions of, when I sit down here and try and listen to a podcast, there's so many distractions of Facebook and things coming in, and on a plane. Yeah. And it's getting worse on a plane where, you have more Wi-Fi connectivity and those things are popping up. But I could zone in, in those circumstances. It's like me trying to listen to a podcast though, down here with other things going on. I have to listen to podcasts when I'm driving or on a plane. And even on a plane, listening is not a good thing for me. That's a thinking time. So I think just recognizing those, like for people, recognizing those times and then giving yourself that ability. I went out one time and I just drove, like during the pandemic, I just drove around so I'd have time to listen to podcasts.
Yeah. Daniel brings up a good point. Because Liquid, you said, hey, what's your source for knowing that they use that field for search? And that is something we need, I think, to start. And it's a bummer, but I don't know about you. I don't trust any numbers from anybody anytime. Like I just watched this thing on Netflix. It's called Unwell, and it's all these different things. Like one's on a ayahuasca, which I used to just call that LSD, but apparently it's different. One is on fasting, and one is on essential oils. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you start watching it, and I'm like, is this an essential oil commercial? And they're really getting into it. And then towards the end, they point out that the two biggest essential oil companies are ginormous multi-level marketing. Oh, yeah. And they said this is kind of like the new, and they said they showed it's the same. It's housewives selling to other housewives, and I was like, wow, that looks like a scam. So it was kind of interesting. But at the beginning of it, I stopped like halfway, and I'm like, is anybody else using essential oils? Because this looks kind of cool. Like people are getting, this and that, and then you get to the end, you're like, oh, maybe not so much. I know my brother.
It's big business.
Huge. That's what they said.
Yeah.
They said it was like 10 years ago. But that's just a thing where I think we need to start saying, like, not that I don't believe you, but I would like to dig deeper. What's your source for that? Because the whole time I was like, I'm watching it, I'm like, I need to see who produced this documentary. Because there was a thing on the No Agenda show, which is why I listen to the show. A study came out saying how vaping was bad for corona. And it turned out that the study was an online study, and it was like insert famous college had basically written about it. They didn't even do the study. And so, but they were saying that vaping, whatever the headline was scary and spooky. And when you actually deconstructed it, you're like, wait a minute, this was like an online study of about 150 people, and people are screaming like the sky is falling. And I was like, we need to start asking, what's your source for that? And I was like, So, but anyway, Bang says the podcast subreddit went to a listener only subreddit. See right there, I'm like, listener only? Creator content will be deleted as of Monday. Bangs the troll.
So it does sound like, well, in other words, like we have those podcasters communities that are out there where you can, on Facebook, where you can't publicize
right.
your own stuff unless you're asked.
So
something like that.
So 1.4 million people in that. So
no, it's cool. Listen, Reddit's a great place for some people. So I don't want to diminish it in any way. It's a great place. It's just, it's not my thing. I've got enough. I have enough. Like I can't do Instagram. I don't get it.
I try. Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Yeah.
So-
Illiquity says, one of the podcast production companies I work for, can't remember which one. And again, I would ask them, what's your source on that? Because as far as I know, as Daniel is saying here, I've tested search in Mac OS, Big Sur, but Apple Podcast versions have ignored the description summary and content encoded for search. They look at the title of the episode, the title of the podcast, and the author field. That's it. So, and he said, I'm pretty sure they're spreading a myth. That's a polite way of saying. And here's the thing: some companies, maybe not that one, but some companies, are still saying, if you give me $1,000, I'll get you into New and Noteworthy. It's something that it makes them sound like, oh, well, you need to do this because this and this and that. And
I haven't heard that pitch in a while, though.
Yeah, but there are people. There was somebody for a while there, and I went and Googled it. And I'm like, sure enough, they were saying that ID3 tags would boost your SEO. And I'm like, that doesn't make physical sense. And, James Cridlin finally kind of tested it. I'm like, yeah, that's wrong. So, but again, it sounds really good. It's like, oh no, if you do this, and the reason it's attractive is because people go, what's an ID3 tag? I didn't even know what it was. And you go, oh, ID3 tags, let me show you. Look at how much I know. See, blah, blah, blah. I'm a big expert. And it's like, oh, but in the end, it's like, no, those don't do anything for you. So,
yeah,
but
I wonder how big the podcast advice space is in dollars.
Dude,
do you know? Like, if we were just to think about that space you're in, I'm not really there, but how big that space is from a dollars perspective, how much money gets spent on buying podcast advice every year?
That's a good question. I was laughing today. I was listening to Mark Asquith. I forget the name of his show. It's got an orange artwork, podcast something. He's the guy behind Captivate. And he said something about blah, blah, blah. Or if you hire a podcast consultant that's been podcasting for 15 minutes, that was his polite little dig.
Yeah.
Because if somebody said, what's the way to make money in podcasting? I'm like, well, first things first, start your podcast. And after about 6 episodes, you can quit and become an editor. And then after you edit your first customer for about $15 an episode, you can become a consultant. And that seems to be the path I see a lot. And I'm like, if you can make money that way, go right ahead. But whatever, whatevs.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Whatevs. Props.
Well, that's the thing. I'm talking about this. I don't want to do the school of podcasting, but that seems to come up every now and then where people are paying. You have to pay to be on my show. It's an appearance fee.
Oh,
is what I heard people talk about, and I was like, if you can get it, I guess. If
somebody asks to be on the show, right? So if you've got somebody coming in, and I don't see why not. If because I'm always suspect when somebody asks me, like, right, when they're coming, I'm like, okay, what's your motive? What angle are we trying to do on this thing? Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't see, there was a couple years ago, there was somebody, we got wind of somebody charging $50. And I remember there was a whole group of people who were like, that's like criminal. And how dare you? And, that kind of thing. And I was like, this still isn't you can do this. And I don't think it's a bad thing to say, yeah, you know what? You can come on my show. We get, I get all those emails all the time. I'm sure you do. And everybody listening does as well, from folks saying, hey, would you replace this link with this one? Or do you do guest posts? And I just finally made a Patreon level that said, hey, if you want a guest post or a guest link, it's going to cost you $25 or $50. And that's totally stopped. Like, I can send them the link back and most of them say, I'm not really. I was just kind of hoping for free. So,
when I had the guy on from Podit, and you can kind of make your own guest form that they have to fill out. And I didn't make it super long, but you do have to sign up for a Podit account, which is free. So it's a little baby hurdle. And I now, if somebody goes, hey, blah, I'd love to be on your show. I invented, I have the cure for cancer. I'm like, I'm handling all of my guest requests through Podit. Here's the link. Go over and sign up. And so far, nobody wants to sign up. And I was like, all right, if you really want to be on the show, it's free, Liquidity says, I worked with someone, or I talked to someone about show notes, and she hired a podcast producer, in quotation marks, who didn't even know the correct terms for show notes. Well, the fun thing is, there it's confusing because when somebody says a podcast, I think show. Other people, and it's kind of correct that I am listening to a podcast, but technically I'm listening to the episode. So episode and show get interchanged a lot. And in tech support, there are times when you're like, what do you
Yeah.
you know,
Show notes is a terrible term, by the way. It's awful. Most people don't know what you mean. Like real people, like we know, but regulars, regular people, you say, oh, it's in my show notes. And they're like, where's that? Like, what even is that? I have a bunch of listeners on the Gallup side who, when I started saying, the links will be in the show notes. And I said that like everybody knew where those were.
Yeah.
They didn't know where they were. I mean, it's a terrible name. We use it, but it's terrible.
Yeah. Should be, I don't know, description.
Something different.
Yeah.
Something different. Or at least tell them where to go. I use pretty links to say theaverageguy.tv/HGG 451 or whatever, right? That's where they're at. Just say, go find them in the show notes. It's like saying, search for me.
Yeah. Daniel says, I charge $5,000 to interview business owners on the Audacity podcast, and it works. I've successfully avoided having interviews for years. Yeah, I had somebody this week want to know if they could be a guest on Ask the Podcast Coach. And I was like, we don't really do guests here, and you can come in anytime you want.
You should have said it's $500.
Yeah.
And then, if they show up, they show up and be like, yeah, awesome. There you
go. This is not good. Gary says, pot it. It's P-O. It's either 2 Ds or 2 Ts. It's something fun with the name. I think if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/PODDIT, survey says, yeah, schoolofpodcasting.com, PODDIT is my affiliate link. So yeah, it's that's always fun. And again, kind of goes back to, I guess if you can get it. And if you can't, I think Bank said that if you can get the money, if there's a market, it's got value.
It's a great way to create a speed bump so that folks, if you want to slow folks down on this thing, if they're serious about it, you don't have to be ridiculous. I mean, 5,000 is a little ridiculous, Daniel, just to be honest. And I get why he's doing it. I totally get it. It makes sense, right? That is an amount no one will say yes to. And if they do, you're going to take it, right?
Yeah.
I get it. But 50 or $100, maybe something where a little bit lower, where you do get that, you do get a few people who say, I had one vendor go, yeah, I'll pay $25 for a link to insert a link. Okay. And they sponsored, they jumped on Patreon for a month, paid it, and then dropped out.
Yep.
You're like, well, okay.
Oh, I did find this out, and you'll hear this on the School of Podcasting. I emailed Memberful, who is owned by Patreon, because I did an episode last week kind of saying, hey, if Patreon goes out of business and things are not looking well for them, and he kind of did what's the old Steve Jobs line about the rumors of my death have been, who said that? The rumors of my death have been highly exaggerated, because eventually that came true when you think about it.
Well, it does for all of us.
Yeah. But he was saying that just because they're getting sued doesn't mean they're going out of business, part of being bad. And he also said that they are independent. Like he said, I know we're owned by Patreon, but we kind of run our own little ship. So he kind of made it sound like if Patreon went out of business, Memberful would still be around. I still don't like their pricing format, but I was like, okay. Oh, that's good to know. Bang says the Q2U is in stock at Sweetwater.
Yeah.
The bad news is Sweetwater has no affiliate program, but if somebody needs a microphone, it's not always about the affiliate thing. So anyway, the quote was Mark Twain. Thank you very much. See, our chat room is awesome. But
I think he also said the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. I think that's a Mark Twain quote.
That's when you got to think about it. You're like,
It's chilly. It's chilly. I went to a 4th of July game one time, a baseball game at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And we were in blankets and
really?
Jackets. Oh, it was freezing because the fog would come in and it was just, the wind would blow and it was chilly and cold. And yeah, San Francisco in the summer at night, it's nice. You don't need air conditioning because it cools down every evening. The fog comes in.
Interesting.
There's some cold summer days in San Francisco for sure. I kind of miss it. Being in the Bay Area, I kind of miss it.
Did not know that.
Just saying that's a Mark Twain. I'm pretty sure that's a Mark Twain quote.
Sounds like it.
Say
It's either him or, well, yeah. If you have a quote, you just say that was Mark Twain, Abraham Lincoln, or Yogi Berra.
Yeah, I just
Is
got
those-
flagged on Twitter for that quote.
You get flagged?
Twitter's done a whole, Twitter and has
Yeah.
done this whole thing of verification, or what are
Yeah.
they calling it? Anyways, yeah. So I didn't, but it's just, that's one of those things. It was a misquote. I'm sure it was a misquote. We'll have to, in the post show, we'll have to.
Yes. Well, Gary was saying about Podit. I'm trying to find my link. If you go to podcasting resources, there is a section that says guest booking, and I get tons of these. I'm going to say almost once a month, where somebody will say, "Hey, I've launched this new thing. You can list your show over there," and I'm like, "Okie dokie," and they're all kind of doing this. I don't know that they're, the biggest one was podcast singular guest plural. So podcastguests.com was the first one. But there are tons of these now that, and that's where I'm like, I don't know. How about Google, beekeeping expert, Google. There you go. That's the person I want to have on my show. So
maybe not said by Mark Twain, by the way. There's some
Roy
there's
Rogers.
some debate. There's some debate whether he actually said it or not, but we'll take that into the post show.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, thank
Thanks,
you, chat
guys.
room. Nice to have you back, Jim.
Thanks. Good to be back. Everybody have a great weekend.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
Get some podcasting done, would you? See ya.
Take care.